Good morning, everyone, and welcome along to the Blood Red Morning Bulletin. I'm your host for today, Patrick Smith, and I'm joined by Liverpool.com's Dave Comerford to go through the latest Liverpool FC news and transfer rumours. We're here every weekday, live at 10 a.m, as I said, on the Blood Red YouTube channel and Liverpool.com Facebook and Twitter. Dave, how's things this morning?
All good, although I'm probably starting to get a little bit nervous now for the game at the weekend, which is going to be a very difficult one, I think.
Yeah, really, isn't it? There'll be a bit of a preview of that one from our various podcasts. We've got Analysing Anfield going out today, the Blood Red podcast tomorrow, and of course we'll be on this show from 10 a.m. tomorrow previewing it as well. But for now, Dave, let's talk transfer rumours, shall we? I think it's 8 days, isn't it, until the window closes. There's not much time left for Liverpool. I realised this morning there's going to be a week left tomorrow, which is actually a pretty perilous position to be in. Of course, we've spoken about midfielders all the time. We're going to start today with a centre-back, though, because it's abundantly clear Liverpool need to sign a left-sided, ideally left-footed centre-back, and there's not too many options out there. There's not too many options left out there after the likes of Mickey van der Ven has gone to Tottenham Hotspur, various other players. Piero Hincapie, though, has basically been marked as the main target for Liverpool now. That's according to TalkSport, and I take it with a pinch of salt. But actually, I quite like this rumour myself. Obviously, he's managed by Xabi Alonso, former Liverpool legend, manager at Bayer Leverkusen. Seems a very tidy player, Dave. Good on the ball, can play left-back. He's quick. He's big and physical. The report here from the Echo, he's got a 65.8% tackling success rate compared to Van Dijk's 42 and Konaté's 59. I know that can be skewed depending on how the team plays, but he seems like that ideal, progressive, solid left-sided centre-back that Liverpool desire.
Yeah, I think Liverpool have got a bit of a dilemma in the last few days of the market. Just, is it going to be a case of, do we go for someone, we know Levi Colwill was probably first choice in that position, signing a new deal at Chelsea. Are they going to go for someone who maybe would have been regarded at the start of the window as like an imperfect solution there? Or are they going to kind of wait, as we've seen them do in the past, wait for someone who's much more compelling? Because I think this player is really, the vision for them is to be Ibrahim Konaté's long-term partner as kind of, a world-class centre-back at Liverpool. As kind of, I suppose, the successor to Virgil van Dijk on the left side too. So a lot of responsibility would await this player in the future. So then there has to be, as much as, they probably wouldn't need to start straight away. I think there's got to be a lot of confidence in what they can do long term. So I don't know from that standpoint what Liverpool are going to do. If we're talking about Hincapie specifically, I think, you mentioned there, the fact he can play left back is important because, we know in this shape that basically it alternates between a back three and a back four. So if he's comfortable, defending in a four, then that would be ideal. It's something I've said sort of throughout the window. I think Van der Ven, that was the strength of his too. Obviously, in an ideal world, Vardiel would have been able to do that for Liverpool too. Obviously, too expensive, but yeah, I mean, the impression I get from what I see is that he's probably, in terms of the left-footed, left-sided options, he's probably kind of, in and around that top bracket. I think there's maybe some concerns about his level at the moment and maybe kind of errors that he makes. But I suppose if you're Liverpool and, you've got Van Dijk and Konaté as your first choice pair, and you've also got a couple of other options, and they're a little bit less reliable, but it's not like, it's not like there's a shortage there when everyone's fit. Then I think maybe that's okay. Maybe you can sort of, show a bit of patience while someone does develop, while someone does kind of cut those mistakes out of their game. And I think that would be the plan for Liverpool, is to kind of ease a player in long term, and then that way you're not kind of exposing them a little bit too quickly. And obviously what is the most difficult league in the world.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on that one. I mean, there'll be some concern from Liverpool fans because obviously he is injured at the moment, or he's coming back from an injury in the summer. But I think it was like a freak foot injury or something, if I remember reading about it. He's not got like, a long history of muscle injuries and knee injuries, which, Liverpool players in the past have often come to the club with, and they persisted during their time there. But as you say there, look, I absolutely love Andy Robertson. He's an amazing player. He's a huge part of what Liverpool do. But there are times in this new shape where he basically plays centre-back. And when you're in that situation, he's not exactly an ideal left-sided centre-back. Someone like a Hincapie. I also really like Gonzalo Inacio, Sporting Lisbon. One of those players in certain matches would be better than Robertson in that position. Because it's a really difficult one, Dave, isn't it, with that one? I mean, if you're signing someone like Hincapie, is that basically not only Van Dijk's replacement, but are you then accepting that, this person could come in and be, for half the games at least, when they are playing that shape, Andy Robertson's replacement?
Yeah, I think it's a really important question. To be honest, I think regardless of who Liverpool get, looking at realistic available options at this point, I think regardless, Robertson is going to play the majority of matches. I wonder if, say, you were playing. I mean, this weekend's game is a good example. One of the toughest matches Liverpool will have all season. Really, that would maybe be the kind of game where if that player was here already and maybe it was a bit further down the line in the season, then yeah, you do kind of go with a more conservative defender there. And then maybe last week, also a good example for the other side of the argument, where if you're playing a game where you expect to have a lot of the ball and maybe you have to kind of break a defense down, then I suppose that's where Robertson could be useful and maybe he could have a bit more license. So I just think it will give Liverpool different options, because at the moment, I don't necessarily think they have those. And I suppose the concern, even beyond kind of the tactical side of things, has to be just kind of numerically too, because like you say there, I mean, we're talking about muscle injuries, knee injuries, things like that. Joel Matip's obviously someone who's got a really concerning record in that regard. Gomez too. Canate's injury record isn't great. I mean, at the moment, it looks okay. I mean, it's all right at the moment in the current situation, but it can easily turn. And that's where I think, there's a discussion going on at the moment. Is it more important to get a centre-back or the midfielder? And I suppose that's where you could say, do you know what? If there is only to be one more signing, then a centre-back would probably be more useful to Liverpool.
Yeah, I completely agree with that point. And I think, it's almost a priority for me as well, if I'm speaking personally, because there's so many times, especially in pre-season, and I think we saw it a few times last season, where Liverpool just played in the back three and Trent sort of stayed in midfield. I know he would hop back to right back in transition, but a lot of the time he was actually staying in the centre of the park in pre-season, and Robertson was playing as that left-sided centre-back. I remember specifically in the Greuther match, I think it was against the other German team, Darmstadt, they were playing as a back three. So if you're bringing in a centre-back, Liverpool can then comfortably play that formation. I know that Robertson is more than capable enough as a defender, and he did actually very well there, obviously fantastic on the ball. But if you've got three centre-backs playing there, then, the five in front of them can then play as a five in midfield. And then, of course, you get your two attackers. But yeah, certainly interesting to see how that pans out. As we said, there's only 8 days left of the window. So praying that they can bring in that left-sided centre-back and a centre midfielder as well, that we're now going to talk about, Dave, because Liverpool are in the market for a number 6. We've spoken about Sofyan Amrabat at some length over the past couple of weeks. There was rumours he was going to Man United, then that deal was off. Then Liverpool, then that deal was off. It's a bit of a mess, to be honest, Dave, isn't it? What do you think is going to happen with Amrabat? Because he's been left out of Fiorentina's Europa League squad. I believe they're playing tonight or tomorrow night for their Europa League qualifier. Pretty interesting statement decision from them, isn't it, to leave him out of the squad? Do you think that maybe hints that he's finally going to get a move?
Yeah, it's hard to get a read on this one, because I think that's happened without kind of any indication that the player's really close to joining one of his many suitors, in fairness. Normally when a player gets left out of the squad, it's because something's really advanced. I mean, we saw Romeo Lavia that got left out of the squad a couple of times, and Liverpool had made a bid. They made multiple bids for him at that point. So as far as we know, I don't think there's been kind of a formal offer that's gone in, unless something's happened under wraps. We don't know. Maybe something is going to come out now because of this. Where do I think he'll go? I mean, to be honest, I think I'd probably say Man United are more likely to get him. I think there's been maybe stronger links throughout the summer on the United side. And also, United are going to panic a little bit, I think, as well, in this last week of the market, just because in the first 2 games, you've seen them basically really struggle without...
Casemiro's legs have gone, basically, and they're going to panic, aren't
they? without anyone kind of there to support him on the defensive side. I think Mount's been quite anonymous. Obviously, Fernandes maybe isn't actually going to provide that protection either. So I think, to me, all the ingredients are there, especially if the players are of a mind to leave at this point, and Fiorentina are kind of seemingly willing to let him kind of just sort his future out. Then all the ingredients there for me for United to go and get him. And I think if you're Liverpool, you're a little bit wary about getting involved in another transfer battle after what's happened, and just kind of not only kind of the embarrassment of losing out, but also where you kind of left afterwards, just kind of sitting there wondering where you go from here. So, yeah, for me, my prediction would be Amrabat goes to Man United, but I do hope Liverpool are able to bring in a specialist and someone maybe a bit younger than Endo in that number 6 position too.
I mean, as you say that, I mean, they are likely to be caught in a transfer battle. But if you were to ignore that, would you actually want Sofyan Amrabat at Liverpool? Do you think he would be a good fit, as a player purely?
The thing is like you can't necessarily afford to be perfectionist, I suppose. Myself and Matt on the Liverpool.com podcast were talking this week about how Liverpool have sort of allowed perfect to become the enemy of good sometimes, and focus too much on things that players can't do as opposed to what they can, and maybe that's left them short and things like that. And you can definitely debate the merits of that approach. I mean, I see kind of on my social media feed like a lot of skepticism about signing Amrabat, and I've spoken before on here about how I don't want to read too much into how he was playing at the World Cup because Morocco were basically there in their two banks of four. But the time I've seen him and been impressed by him, in Fiorentina colours, was the Conference League final last year when Fiorentina were playing a lot more advanced, and I did kind of quite like the look of him then. And I think, if he was signed, I don't think I'd be incredibly excited by it, but I think that it would sort of be a move that could raise the ceiling of the Liverpool side significantly. And I also think that, on top of, I suppose, the defensive contribution and the what he can do on the ball, I just think, someone with his kind of stamina would be a huge asset as well in Klopp's system, just because one of the main things that kind of struck you watching him was just that he had this limitless tank. I think there was one run where he challenged Mbappe and ran about, 40, 50 yards alongside her, and that would be kind of the outstanding memory on that front. So I think he'd be a decent package for Liverpool. I don't think they'll sign him, but there's definitely worse options out there at the moment in that number 6 market.
No, I agree with you. That's why I quite like him as a player, and that's why I quite like the Endo signing, to be honest, because that box midfield that Liverpool are going to be going for basically the whole season, with Trent dropping in, and then you have Szoboszlai and McAllister pretty much starting every game they're fit for in front of them. You just need a big beast who can run all game behind them. I think it really is that simple. As much as you'd love, a player who can do it all, like Caicedo, to be fair, probably has got that skill set. But then also that sort of player like an Amrabat and Endo, you just need an absolute warrior in there who's going to run 12, 13 kilometres every match and is going to make every challenge. And they're going to sprint around and they're going to cover, those defensive, not frailties that Szoboszlai and McAllister have, but then it allows them to play further forward. I think a simple signing like Amrabat could be ideal, but as you say, they're probably going to get caught in a transfer battle with Man United. Do you want to risk missing out on a player to your arch rivals? Probably not. So, yeah, I'm not sure that one's going to pan out, but I think he's the sort of player Liverpool need to be going for, to be honest. But another defensive midfielder they've been linked with is Andre, and he's come out and basically done an interview saying he's really happy with all the reports. He's, delighted to be linked with Liverpool. I can't find the exact quote here in the report, but basically it's going to be a January signing, Dave. Me and Ben Buckshak spoke about this the other day. Do you think Liverpool have missed out on the player this summer? And could they, rue that mistake come January if they have to pay more money for him?
I don't think so. I think the money would be decent anyway, in terms of, I don't think you'd be paying a huge amount. I suppose that's the advantage of shopping outside the European market sometimes. And to be honest, it might end up being for the best. If Liverpool really want this player, then it might end up being for the best, because the Brazilian season runs from, I think, sort of the spring until the winter.
Yeah.
So essentially, if you brought Andre in now, then you're basically making him play 18 months of football almost without a break. And that just feels like a recipe to completely exhaust him, to be honest. And then he'd have his kind of small pre-season break next year, but still it'd be a huge load to take on. And the one thing I remember is, I think Watford bought Richarlison from Brazil during the summer. I think it would have been about 2017 maybe. Started the season really well. And then the back end of the season, he just completely went missing. And I think, to be honest, I think he was just completely exhausted, like I say. So I think if they'd go for him in January, the season will have ended kind of early December, I think. And then that gives him basically a month off at least. And then he'd come back, very refreshed. And he's an asset to Liverpool the second half of the season. We talked up last year about these players who were going to benefit from not going to the World Cup, when, it'd be kind of the same scenario with Andre this year. So, to be honest, I mean, it's annoying that, like, the number 6 signing that I think is still needed might get delayed until January. But I think in this particular case, there's probably a bit of wisdom in waiting, actually.
No, yeah, I completely agree. It makes sense to wait for it. And as you said, their players will burn out. You don't want to be signing a player who's, 2/3 of the way through his current season. He's going to absolutely burn out come March, April. And that's the last thing Liverpool need, because that happened to them basically last season, didn't it? I mean, look at Paul Fabinho after playing, all the players played 60-odd matches that season before. They, of course, had the World Cup in the middle of the season. It just completely burnt out the players, didn't it? So, yeah, makes sense on that one. Of course, Fluminense actually play in the early hours of tomorrow, basically tonight, if you want to call it, at 1:30. Their Copa Libertadores match. The final is actually in the Maracanã, which is Fluminense's home stadium. So I'm sure that Andre and Fluminense are going to be making sure they play the final in their home stadium if they can. And as you say, Dave, the Brazilian season finishes on the 3rd of December. So, gives them a nice month off. Can come into Liverpool, have a bit of a mid-pre-season, I suppose, or a pre-season for him in January, and embed him into the squad in February. It sounds a pretty ideal one on that front. So hopefully they can hash that deal out. Maybe they'll even agree a fee ahead of time on a transfer. That'd be a nice little touch. But yeah, interesting to see how it pans out. As we've established, still 8 days to go. We're still talking on this podcast about the need for a centre-back and a defensive midfielder. We'll probably be talking about the same tomorrow and likely to be Monday. Time is running out for Liverpool. Dave, thank you for joining me again. Let's hope Liverpool can get someone across the line by next week, because we're going to pull our hair out talking through these rumours once again, aren't we? But anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for watching along with us here. As I said, we've got Analysing Anfield going out later today. Brilliant podcast with Josh Williams and Mo Stewart. And of course, the Blood Red podcast will be there tomorrow, previewing Liverpool's clash with Newcastle United at the weekend. Massive, massive game on Sunday for the Reds. But yeah, for myself, Patrick Smith, and Dave Comerford, we'll catch you again soon.